When it comes to deciding to be a police officer, sometimes people, and even a question you might see is, will your personal beliefs get in the way? Let's discuss. Hey, before we get started, I have two gifts down in the description for you. One being the Getting Started workshop. It's going to walk you through every phase of the hiring process. There's some hidden bonuses in there. One of them being the exam for eligibility for candidates. So go in there, take it, see where you rank. Next is the free coaching call with myself or any of the other instructors. We just brought on more instructors to open it up. A lot of people have been reaching out saying, Frank, you need more times. There's more times in there. Use them. They're for you. It's a free coaching call. Now, what do you do about personal beliefs and personal conflicts getting in the way of you pursuing your your goal as a law enforcement officer? Or maybe that's the question that you're going to get asked, based on religious beliefs or personal beliefs or anything. I'm going to give you the answer straight out the gate here on what I say when I get asked this question. This question is usually asked to me in a chief's interview, right? Or, ultimately a chief's interview. And then more importantly, the psych interview. I see this come up a lot in the psych interview. And it might be, hey, are you religious? Or, hey, how do you feel about this or this situation? Understand that law enforcement in and of itself is service, right? If you can't wrap your head around that you're serving the community, you're even serving the people that you're stopping, that you're pulling out on a traffic stop. Today's, ticket might be tomorrow's victim. You can't have some type of personal or 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 bias, I want to say, against an individual just because maybe you've arrested them in the past, right? No, it doesn't work like that. When you put on the uniform, when you put on the badge, the shield, right? That is what everything hits off of. Everyone, if anyone ever gets frustrated at you, they're frustrated at the uniform, not necessarily you as an individual. I can sit here and tell you, look at all the veterans, right? The military veterans that come back and they're a veteran and everyone thanks them. Hey, thank you for your service. I really appreciate it. But then they go become a law enforcement officer. And just because they put on the uniform, they went from being thank you for your service to, wow, I mean, you're just what's wrong with this world, right? No, they didn't change fundamentally as a person. They're still the same person that believes in service and in sacrifice and in giving a part of them to the community or to those they want to serve. So when it comes to an issue like this, if your personal beliefs get in the way, they really shouldn't. And obviously, if they do get in the way, that maybe law enforcement isn't exactly the right profession for you. And I say this not to deter anyone because no, the whole goal here is to get good officers out on the street so that you can better serve the community. And that's my ultimate goal. Good officers, better service to the community, right? Protecting someone, protecting a mother and their children or siblings from whoever. It's just getting out there and doing, that one good deed that you can do, at least that one good deed you could do, I should say. I've always kind of answered this question is will your personal beliefs conflict with the duties that you have to perform as a law enforcement officer? I answer this in two ways. First one being is I'm well aware of, or I believe I'm aware of the duties of a law. If you've never been a law enforcement officer before, don't say I'm well aware, right? Because you're not necessarily. But based on my understanding of the duties and responsibilities, I believe that my personal beliefs actually coincide and align with the responsibilities, and that's one reason why I'm applying for this position. That's how I would answer that question from that avenue. Another aspect is, do you believe that you will have any conflicts or any personal conflicts with this position, or maybe, utilizing the use of deadly force or anything like that? The way I answer this question is I understand the responsibilities based on what was posted, and I would not have applied to this position if I wasn't willing to accept and fully accept the responsibilities and requirements of the position. And that's how I answer that question, right? I don't go off into a tangent. Sometimes the chief will ask you straight up, do you understand that there is a potential to use lethal or deadly force in the performance of your duties? And how do you feel about that? If you go into the, oh, I'm gonna, of course I'm not gonna use that if I don't have to. That's gonna be my last resort. I would never do that, as a first resort. Well, back up, because you might not have the understanding of law enforcement that you think. Unfortunately, sometimes an officer's last resort or their first resort is their last resort, right? If someone's an active shooter in a school, right? You're going to go in there and you're not going to be using a less than lethal force option. You're going to be using a lethal force option. So saying that, and you're talking to a chief, he or she may hear that answer over. Oh, of course, that's going to be my last option. No, the question is, are you okay and are you able to accept the responsibility that you may have to use lethal force? And when you try to bounce around that idea, obviously you're not going to come out and just say, oh yeah, I'll do that if I have to, right? No, you're gonna be mature about it. You're gonna say, hey, I understand that that may be a responsibility of the profession, and while I hope that that doesn't come to play, I understand that, and I would not have applied to this position if I wasn't willing to accept all the responsibilities that come with this position. That, I think, is one of the more professional answers that you can give. It's actually, when I say that, it's the most professional answers that I've always given, and they've gotten the best feedback from me personally, or for me personally. So that's one avenue that you might consider. But let's get into the actual. Hey, do your personal beliefs actually conflict with law enforcement? And I truly believe this in my heart. If you're truly getting into law enforcement to serve others, then most personal beliefs won't actually conflict with the actual intent of what law enforcement is, and that's service, sacrifice, integrity, those type of core values, so to say. But you get into the situation where, let's say you're a pacifist, right? And you don't believe in violence at all. Well, unfortunately, law enforcement officers have to deal with the worst people uh, out there, and there just are some bad people out there. Unfortunately, I'm not saying that the people can't go through the system as it's intended, and change their lives around. I'm not saying that, but some people just don't ever want to, and some people just commit very heinous crimes. And unfortunately, those people don't just, you know, turn themselves in and comply with law enforcement. So there is some type of physical aspect that will be required, some type of, I don't want to say violence, but some type of, physical defense, physical altercation that may ensue to the use of your non-lethal options all the way up to your lethal options. So that would be my biggest my my biggest personal factor. I would say, if someone's not necessarily the right fit for law enforcement, if you're saying, hey, I 100% don't believe in violence, and I could never, use physical force against another individual. I understand that we define use of force as just putting on handcuffs, right? Just physically touching someone and putting on handcuffs is defined as a use of force. It's a minimal use of force, but it's a use of force. So that's a physical altercation, and some people don't respond very well to it. A lot of people don't respond very well to it. It's not an ideal situation for anyone. No one really wants to be in that situation. So I think for that, what you need to do is you need to do some self-reflection and see, hey, do my do my personal beliefs prevent me? And if you get past that, then you need to start taking a look and say, hey, why am I getting into law enforcement? And while I know there's a lot of people out there that would say, oh, law enforcement, it's, you get in and you fall under this kind of brother and sisterhood. No, if you understand, and I go over this with all my coaching members, especially when they do their exit session with me, and I give them the best tips and mentorship I can give them to go out, be successful in the academy, and then as a law enforcement officer. Some of those tips are understanding, hey, this is service. No one's forcing you to become a law enforcement officer. So the minute that you get in there and you start having some type of us versus them mentality, law enforcement, you should retire. You should leave. because law enforcement isn't for you. You're there to serve the community, and that's the soccer mom that was speeding, and that's the DUI driver that you stopped pulling out of a bar, right? People are allowed to make mistakes in life, right? We have the penalties put in place to help mitigate that, and we have the system put in place to try and remediate any of those things. I'm not saying it's perfect, and nothing is perfect. I'm not trying to state that, but what I am trying to state is you as the individual, your personal beliefs. When my members and everyone else that reaches out to me says, hey, I just really want to make an impact. I really want to do good for someone else other than me. That personal belief in itself, if you say that, law enforcement might be or probably is the right career for you. It You will have no greater sense of satisfaction than going out and making a positive impact on someone's day. And sometimes you'll have bad days, but guess what? That's a job. That's a career. Law enforcement, I say, is a profession and a career, not a job, but ultimately it's still employment. You're not going to have perfect days every day. That's unrealistic, and to believe that. Some days you're going to say, man, I really wish that individual just worked with us and didn't resist, because all this was a simple, urinating in public citation, and they turned it into a assault on a police officer or something like that, and it didn't. You'll have those days, but other days you'll go out there and you'll say, someone will flag you down and say, there's someone breaking into my house right now, and my teenage daughter is trapped inside, and there's multiple assailants breaking into the house, and you're going to be able to coordinate or respond and get there and save that individual. There is nothing that gives you a better sense of self reward than making that impact. And ultimately, that's the selfish part of it. The other impact is the impact you make on those community members you serve. So you should always keep that mindset. And if this is your mindset, consider law enforcement. It really is a very rewarding career. The compensation and the benefits are 100% there these days, which is why most people don't really understand how competitive it is and how difficult it is to become a law enforcement officer. I make the joke all the time, kind of facetiously, that it's harder to become a law enforcement officer than the president of the United States. They don't have to take a polygraph or a psych exam, right? So I make that joke, but at the same point in time, yeah, you have your application phase, you have your written exam phase, you have your physical exam phase, you have your board interview phase, then you have your chief's interview phase, then you have your potential conditional offer phase if they have that. Then you have your background phase, which is significantly long. Then you have your polygraph phase. Then you have your medical phase. Then you have your psychological phase. All these different phases, right, that you have to go through. There's not many positions in the world that require such a rigorous screening process. And then on top of that, you're still on probation for a year to 2 years after you graduate the academy and go through a 6-month academy, which is, if you wanted to look at colleges, I think a bachelor's degree, and don't quote me on this, but it's somewhere around 400 hours of credit hours of in-class studies. Well, a 6-month academy can be 800 to 1,000 hours of studies. And then on top of that, and some people say, well, you have to also, for every 1 hour you're in class, you have to study, at home too. You have to do that in the police academy. You don't just go to the police academy, learn everything, and then go home and not study and not train some more, because you're going to fail, right? So it's an entire, master's degree packed into 6 months, bachelor's degree, master's degree, whatever the credit hour equivalent would be there, packed into 6 months, because you're going every single day, opposed to for 8 to 10 to 12 hours a day, opposed to a a college degree where you're going 3 hours a week per class, right? Maybe you have 5 classes, that's 15 hours a week. You're doing 40 to 60 hours a week in the academy. So there's always that miscomparison there, but that's what I'm trying to get at it. And in this particular one is, if you feel that hey, does my core beliefs actually line up with law enforcement? I don't know if I could ever be a law enforcement officer. I don't know if my beliefs line up. The true intent of law enforcement is service. and service to the community and being there for the community in the way that you need to, not with any of this political stuff or anything like that, but in the way that it's intended, which is service and sacrifice. And if you believe that those are some beliefs and values you have, take a look at it. It might just be for you, and it might change your entire life, and it might change your entire family's life, for the better, both financially and 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 internally, right? When you can come home and feel that, hey, I've accomplished something. Once again, not every day is going to be great, but you come home and say, hey, I made a difference today. That comes home, and you bring that to your family, and it helps have a better family life as well. So if you're thinking about it, take the free getting started workshop down below. It's going to walk you through every phase of the hiring process, and it's going to kind of show you what it's going to go through for the hiring and what it would be like to be a law enforcement officer. If you're really serious about it and you're ready to move forward, or maybe you're already in the process, jump on a free coaching call with myself or any of the other instructors. We'd be glad to help you in any way we can. Hope this helps. Stay safe, and I'll see you next time.